On fait bonjour à toutes, et à tous et bienvenue dans ce
Oh, hello
deuxième
everyone, and welcome to the second,
ce troisième numéro
or
de
third one actually, third eMag
climatique en Europe.
regarding adaptation and climate change in
La
Europe,
résilience et
and mainly
l'adaptation chez
today
l'humain et
regarding the resilience and adaptation
aujourd'hui, il est aussi partenaire
related to water in Europe
depuis des années,
in partnership with
l'Union
EU
européenne
Green
accompagne
Week.
l'eMag
For some years
à
now,
destination de
Climate
nos
Change
clients et
has
de ceux qui vivent
organized various
et
eMags
cette année, nous
around
organisons une journée
climate
sur
actions in Africa,
l'éradication
but
des
this
inondations.
year we started something new
Cependant, les images
around
en
adaptation
Europe, ils sont
in
pas du
Europe.
tout mutuellement exclusifs.
Of course, this
Il y
is
a même
not
des échanges de
exclusive,
bonnes pratiques entre les
and we could
acteurs
all
européens
share
et
best
africains.
practices between European and
Nous
African
avons aussi des
stakeholders.
images sur l'adaptation en Europe tous les
We
2
have
mois
these
qui a lieu tous les 2 mois
eMags
en
for Europe every
Afrique
other month, and every other month
et le prochain, il aura lieu le
climate
26
action in Africa. The next one will
septembre,
be
heure
in
Paris, sur
September
le
26 at 3
financement des
p.m.
énergies
Paris
renouvelables
time
en Afrique.
regarding renewable
Qui mettra le
energy and
lien
financing of renewable energies in Africa. We'll share the link at the end of
l'eMag
this
est
eMag. Now,
traduit
this
en
eMag
directement en français
is
et en français.
being live
Vous pouvez
translated,
donc de votre
and
choix
of
à tout
course you
moment
can
sur une
choose
fenêtre
the
circulaire en bas
language
de votre
that you
écran.
prefer at the
On
bottom
aura
of the
aujourd'hui des
screen.
intervenants
Today we
anglophones
will
et
have
anglophones, donc
English
n'hésitez pas à
speaking and
composer
French
votre
speaking
question.
speakers, so please use the
For your
interpretation
information,
function.
eMag is being live translated in French and in English, and you can select your language by clicking on the little globe icon on the bottom of your screen. Nous vous prions de garder vos micros éteints lorsque vous
Please
ne parlez pas
keep
et
your
n'hésitez
mic
pas
on
à
mute
envoyer
when
vos
you are
remarques
not
ou
taking the
questions
floor, and you can
dans
of
le
course
chat.
use the
N'hésitez
chat
pas
to
aussi
send
à vous
any
abonner avec
comment, any
like et
questions. Also
commenter.
put your name, the name of your
Information,
organization.
la session aujourd'hui va être enregistrée.
This session will be
Avant de
recorded.
commencer, je me
Before
présente.
we get started,
Je
here
m'appelle
I am,
Clémence. Je
Estelle
suis chargée
Mithens,
des événements chez
in
Climate
charge
Change
of
et je
events
serai
at
la
Climate
modératrice
Change,
de
and
l'émission
I will
d'aujourd'hui.
be your
Pour
moderator
ceux
for
qui
today. For those who
ne
might
savent
not
pas,
know this
Climate Change
yet,
est une association qui a été
Climate
créée
Change
en
is an
2015
organization that was founded in
et rassemble
2015
plusieurs
in order to
acteurs qui sont
federate
reconnus
all
par la
of the
CIL.
non-state
Donc, c'est tout ce qui est
actors
collectivités territoriales,
acknowledged by the
société civile
UNFCCC,
et
local
entreprises.
authorities, companies, civil
La première
society, with three
année
main
consécutive
axes
à
to
travers plusieurs
federate
événements
actors through
d'adaptation
various
en Europe et en Afrique.
international
Cette année,
events in
l'eMag
Africa and
va
in Europe.
évaluer l'action climat
Secondly, to analyze
avec des
the climate
publications régionales de
action,
l'Observatoire.
and we
Ça
publish
se passe
some
de 10
documents from the
à 13
observatory, and then we
par
want
mois
to display our
où il y a une
information through
agenda
our
et une cartographie
portal,
qui
where you
sont
will
publiées.
find an agenda and
Le
also a
croisement de ces 3
mapping of our
missions est
actions
possible
in
travaillant
order to
sur l'adaptation au
pursue
changement
this
climatique en
work
Europe.
on adaptation
Nous
and to
serions
climate change in
à
Europe,
Liège en
following
septembre
the
2024.
summit
Nous
of
proposons chaque 2 mois
2024 in Liège every other
un
month
panel
now.
d'échange dédié à
We
l'adaptation
have a
en Europe.
time of
En
discussion
effet,
and
la
exchanging
décision de
regarding
Liège a été
adaptation
prise
in
avec
Europe.
la
The
déclaration de Liège
Liège summit led to the
qui a
Declaration
pris
of
des
Leuven,
mesures sur la demande des acteurs d'une
which
étatique
is a collective
politique
roadmap
publique opérationnelle sur
at
l'adaptation
the
au changement
request of
climatique.
non-state
Et
actors
du coup, chaque IMAG, il traite d'un
on
sujet
adaptation to
important
climate change,
dans
and
la déclaration de Liège.
each of our eMags
Après chaque IMAG,
handle
une
the
partie
various
publie un
topics.
magazine
Now,
version
each
papier
eMag
que vous pouvez
also
consulter avec
gives
facilité
way to the
sur le web.
publication of a
Si vous allez
magazine,
dans le chat,
which you can find on our
vous pouvez
website, and you
cliquer
will
vers la
see
case qui
the
explique un peu plus le
link
contenu et le
on
programme de nos
in
IMAG.
the chat.
Aujourd'hui, au sommaire,
Today, on our agenda,
on aura dans un premier temps
we'll
trois
have different
panélistes qui
speakers.
vont
First of
parler
all,
du
Geoffrey Lupiles, who is a
partenariat français
um,
pour l'eau. Il présentera
project
sa
manager for water
perspective
and
sur
climate at the
des
French
villes
Water
européennes pour
Partnership,
l'eau. Ensuite,
and he will make a
nous aurons Estelle,
presentation.
qui est
Then
journaliste
we have
chez
Léon Perret, he's a
Construction
journalist at Construction
21, qui
21,
nous fera une revue de presse autour
and
de
he
ce
will
sujet.
do a press review
Et
on this
après, on
topic.
rentrera dans la
And
discussion
then we will
panel
really
avec
deep dive into a
quatre
panel
panels.
discussion with
La
4
première, c'est Claudia Nissen,
speakers.
qui est
We have,
bourgmestre
first of
de la
all,
ville de
Claudia
Eupen,
Nissen. She
en
is the
Belgique.
mayor of the city of
Ensuite,
Eupen in
Sarah
Belgium.
Lunz, qui est
Then we
directrice
will have Sarah Lund. She is
internationale
the director
et
of international collaboration
au
and
centre de recherche sur
sustainable
le climat du
initiatives
Danemark, qui s'appelle
for the
Climatorium.
climate center in Denmark called
Poursuivra
Climatorium. And
Alice
then
Thor et
we
Ginevra
will have Alice
Figini.
Tord and
Elles sont toutes les
Ginevra
deux étudiantes à Sciences
Figini.
Po
Both are students at Sciences Po in
dans un
Paris in a
master
master's
Gouverner une
called
transition écologique
Governing
dans les
the
Européennes.
Ecological Transitions in the
Et
European
les 15-20
cities.
minutes de l'IMAG
And the
seront
last 15
dédiées
minutes will be
à votre
dedicated to
audience
you,
pour
to our
poser vos
audience,
questions
so that you may ask
dans
any
un
questions.
échange un peu plus interactif.
So we have a more
Merci
interactive
beaucoup
time. So we want to thank again everyone, all our speakers. We want to thank our interpreter as well. Before I give the floor to Jeffrey, I would first like to ask you one question via Minty. So I would encourage you to scan the QR code or www.menti.com and type in the code. And according to you, what are the most important drivers to make our European cities more resilient to water? So you have about 1 or 2 minutes to answer this question. What important drivers are necessary? Is this financing? Okay, to make our European cities more resilient to water. So do not be shy, it could be in English or in French, of course. What do you think are the most important levers to make EU cities more water resilience? Citizen engagement, I'm reading, finances, a good infrastructure, rules, regulations, land management, finance, citizens partnership or engagement, willingness, digitalization. So that's great. This is all great. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Thank you very much, everyone, for answering. And I will, without further ado, give the floor now to Geoffrey for a presentation of a note that was drafted on behalf of the French Water Partnership regarding the resilience, water resilience and climate adaptation in Europe, which will be published. This note will be published during next week, and we will send you the note with the replay and the magazine of this eMag. Geoffrey, you have the floor. Thank you, Estelle. So, hello, everyone. I'm Geoffrey, project manager, water and climate within the French Water Partnership. I will start my presentation simply to introduce where I'm working, the French Water Partnership, so everyone knows who we are, what we do. We are an organization gathering all the French stakeholders around water, be public, private associations, who are all active internationally. We don't just handle domestic issues, but we actually approach the water issue at global level. We have about 200 members in 6 different colleges, French government, public institution, NGOs, association, foundation, local authorities, parliamentarians, economic actors, research training institutes, etc., and also individuals, experts, French and foreigners. We can look at the next slide. Thank you. So French Water Partnership, PFE, has 3 main axes. First, sustainable development, climate change, and third axis, biodiversity and nature-based solutions. We also have other avenues, a strategic axis that we are working on, in particular agroecology and land use land and access to water and sanitation in humanitarian emergencies. Our main goal is to do advocacy in the various international bodies, institutions, and to produce and to facilitate French know-how. So as a project manager, for example, I visit some international institutions, I attend the COP at the end of the year in order to push forward any issues around water. Bearing in mind that the Paris Agreement of 2015 did not mention soft water at any stage. So this is something that we continue doing to try to integrate all these challenges along the way. Just to give you some context and to remind you what are the main challenges related to climate. Every additional degree of global warming will intensify the water cycle, its variability, and increases the severeness of the extreme events due to water, especially when there's a lot of rainfalls at once, or on the other hand, where we have intense droughts. So what are some of the points of concern? As I was saying, every additional degree would increase evaporation and humidity in the atmosphere, and therefore the intensity of the rainfall, or the opposite, some drought, severe drought in some cases. When we talk about natural disasters, which are going to amplify with climate change in the coming, well, actually, since the 70s, really, it's already 44% of the natural disasters that have been looked at, which are connected at the excess of, connected rather to the excess of water. So it's something, well, water-related challenges. It's something that is very common. On the other hand, for droughts, it's more than half of the population of the world uh, who are living from water and who are affected by these droughts, of course. And this is probably going to get worse. These are some of the forecasts that we are foreseeing. So depending on the degree of global warming, of course, there will be more or less impact on the 5 major risks: ecologic targets, natural disasters, impacts due to human activities, etc., etc. So the more we fail in reducing the degrees and cooling the atmosphere, the more the impacts will be important. Here you have some figures taken from the IPCC just to get an idea, so we can look at what's happening in Europe. Now here you have the heavy rainfall, especially for Europe, which is in the middle of this slide. WCE being Western Europe, surrounded by Northern Europe, Eastern Europe, and Mediterranean. So this is in the middle of this slide. And as we can see here, in green, we have a degree of certainty that it's rather high. Therefore, we can see here that for Europe, maybe outside of Southern Europe, when it comes to rainfalls, we are going to see more and more frequent and intense rainfalls. Now, on the other hand, for droughts, for Northern Europe, Eastern Europe, less certainty when it comes to droughts. But for Western Europe, and especially Southern Europe, of course, and all the Mediterranean basin, we can see that there is a higher risk of droughts as time goes and as climate change intensifies. So here in Europe, we can see that we have these two phenomena, an increase of the rainfall and an increase of the droughts. So some cities, some territories are going to be facing both more rainfalls and intense rainfall, and at the same time an increase of the periods of droughts for during the other seasons of the year. So these are all phenomena connected to water cycle going in both directions, which is a double challenge really for these territories and these cities. Now this is to touch base with regards to water in the NDCs, which is like roadmaps for every state member as part of the climate negotiations. We have some figures which are a bit old, but that's on purpose because it describes the place of water in the initial documents which we had for planning. This was straight after the COP 2015 and the Paris Agreement, but among the priority sectors, countries identified water, about 80% of them did identify water as a main priority for adaptation in the NDCs. But to the left, in terms of risk also, what we're seeing are mainly risk connected to water cycles, with floods and droughts being at the top of the list of the graph. Just to say that when we talk about water and climate, or when we talk about climate rather, of course we talk about water as well. For many stakeholders who maybe are not familiar with these topics in particular, this is something that historically was not mentioned a lot, but now we are trying to raise the awareness about water issues. Now, after giving you some context, which could be a bit depressing to some extent, let's look at the solutions, because thankfully, there are solutions to this problem. The main principles behind solutions that could be implemented in cities would be to maybe place water cycles at the heart of urban planning and at the heart of urban practices. And we are aware in this planning that a city has to be part of a broader basin, has to be homogeneous and uh, monitored in good equity and in good understanding. We also have this concept of sponge cities in order to disimpermeabilize certain urban centers, to let water filter wherever it comes, to avoid any other issues following that, which is why I wrote that it should be a management at the source, and to do risk analysis, which is important also in cities at plot level or parcel level. There's another major principle, and that is to reinforce synergies between key services, still with keeping in mind sustainable development. For example, water management, sanitation, water management, waste management and energy. All of these services, public services, should really reinforce the synergies. For example, in the sanitation management, in order to produce energy, etc. So there could be some positive retroactions which could be implemented if we do this in the planning phase, and if we design our services and we design them in good intelligence, in connection with one another. Now coming to some solutions for the cities, and including nature-based solutions, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, for the resilience of territories, such as droughts and floods, but it's also positive for mitigation. Nature-based solutions in order to green more spaces and to increase the green aspect of a territory that could also help storing CO2s and that kind of solutions. So these are the main headlines of this topic. Let's look at the next slide. Thank you. So nature-based solutions, NBS. This is something that we put forward a lot with an interesting definition, a strict definition by the IUCN. So therefore, that's any action aiming at protecting and managing in a sustainable way or restoring any natural ecosystem or modify them in order to take on the society challenges in an effective and adaptive way, while ensuring the well-being of humanity and producing some benefit for biodiversity. So this definition has been used at UN level. This is really the definition at international level, which acts as a reference. So this great definition also underlines all the nature-based solutions, importance of the nature-based solutions with regards to climate change and the economic, social, and environmental impact. Now, shifting from this pretty dense definition to some more practical application in cities, here you have a few examples, illustrations of nature-based solutions, which we were able to list in the Paris region near Noisy-le-Grand. This is the project of an association called 4D to the left in order to to clear the parking lot from water. Then you see some development in order to filter water excess, in order to reduce the risk of flooding. And to the right, a green space, which is one particular green space that was designed to reduce stagnant water. I know that in the following presentations, we will see many more examples, practical examples. I just wanted to illustrate my presentation with a few examples here, but we can continue with the other speakers, I'm sure. Next slide. So what we do at the French Water Partnership is a lot of advocacy. I just wanted to present here a number of recommendations from the French stakeholders to take on these various challenges that the European cities are facing. We have three major ones, three major recommendations: a subsidiarity principle, meaning that local, regional authorities meaning that they have to be key players when it comes to urban governance at local level. Whatever can be done locally should be done locally, even though it might imply a broader sector, but still it has to be implemented at local level. The concepts have to be able to be adapted to specific context. That's the first recommendation. Second recommendation, a better integration of services in the strategic city planning. I've already mentioned this, that is better synergies between the key services. And the third recommendation, which we're trying to push forward, and that is regarding funding and financing. This is an issue that comes back a lot, and that is to change, to scale up when it comes to sustainable financing of infrastructures. We need to shift from a dynamic of a financing project per project to a more and to not just have a to not just rely on the users financing, sorry, but to have different sources of funding for more long-term and sustainable approach. Just a little bit of advertising on to advertise a movie that the French Water Partnership developed or produced. This is an animation film which you can find online, and that talks about water. Let's imagine a world at +4 degrees and what that would mean in terms of soft water. So what would it look like, if we lived in a world with +4 degrees? Unfortunately, back then people looked at it strange, but unfortunately, this is a more possible scenario that we are looking at nowadays in order to prepare adaptation. So do not hesitate to watch this video. And thank you all for your attention. And now I give the floor back to Estelle. Thank you, Geoffrey. Thank you for giving us this framework. I think it's important to look at some figures and to look at world scale and to see how France is particularly impacted by any water issues. I lived in Brussels. I live in Brussels, and 2-3 days ago we had some heavy rains. which flooded some of the streets within no time. So we can see that cities are not quite fully adapted for that. So thank you, Geoffrey. And we will look at other examples with our other speakers. But now I want to give the floor to Léon Perret. He's a journalist at Construction 21, and he's going to do a press review as to what is being done, what is being said on the website of Construction 21. Leon, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Estelle, for this introduction. Thank you, Jeffrey, for your presentation. As Estelle said, was very interesting and gave us a good framework, a good background. So now I'm going to do a quick press review. This is a good topic for us. We've just completed a presentation on sustainable management, sustainable water management. So we had about 20 or so documents or articles to talk about this issue, and I've selected just some articles that all talk about adaptation in European cities to manage water. First article, we gave the floor, if you like, to experts and asked them to write articles to various stakeholders, people who are involved in this topic. So they might not be journalists, but these are people who are familiar with this topic. First article written by Actira. It's a consultancy specializing in ecological transition, entitled Promenade of Payon in Nice. So the author, Alexandre Shemtov, is in fact the project manager, supported by the Nice Côte d'Azur metropolis and the city of Nice. He presents the stormwater management aspect of the Payon 2 project. The aim of this project is to create a hanging garden above the Payon River to meet the challenges of stormwater and to promote urban greening at the same time. So here in this park, rainwater is collected in enriched soil substrates and directed into storage pipes, enabling it to be reused for watering and cooling the city. This system also incorporates separate stormwater management on the boulevard surrounding the park. This project provides a very interesting response to the two contemporary urban challenges, which are greening the city and treating rainwater. And if successful, this model could also inspire other Mediterranean cities facing similar water resource management challenges, especially with the scarcity of water or simply the management of the resources. Second article now was written by Suez Consulting, and it looks at water networks, and it is called Managing Resources, Caring for Networks. So France has set a target of a 10% reduction in freshwater abstraction by 2030 with a water plan, and it needs to give itself the means to achieve this plan. So this issue of water networks is, of course, more topical than ever, given that responsibility for water will be transferred from the communes, municipalities, who are very attached to that, to the intermunicipalities in 2026. So I know that legislators are getting more and more interested in the water issue. So recent floods and droughts are likely to damage infrastructures and to disrupt water supplies in the future. In this article, they present a familiar triptych of sobriety, efficiency, and alternative solutions that need to be implemented in order to reduce superfluous consumption through regulatory incentives and change in usage, while bearing in mind that changes in behavior will take time. Therefore, there's another lever to consider, which is improving the efficiency of current networks, because the leakage losses represent actually a crucial challenge. And every city has this in a more or less specific way. For example, Paris has about 80% of its networks, again, compared to less than 50% for some rural areas, the efficiency of about 89%. So we need to find more ways of being more efficient. So solutions include, for example, sober use, improved system efficiency, and the use of alternative resources, such as treated water, wastewaters, and rainwater, which is not used enough yet in France. So there's a real issue around the reuse of water and improving also and securing supplies, which are also crucial to make water systems more resilient to extreme climate events. Now, to conclude, I will present now a third article, which was written by Osmosen. Osmosen is a designer and a manufacturer of desalination solutions and plants powered by renewable energies. Now, the topic of desalination remains controversial, considered as too efficient, not efficient enough, too expensive or not efficient enough by some. So we don't really have a full answer. But in this article, even though it is costly and energy intensive, desalination will be a necessary component in a technological mix to guarantee access to drinking water, especially for areas which are highly affected. So some European countries actually are part of these affected regions and have already fought this solution, notably in the Mediterranean region, which echoes what Joffre was saying, Southern Europe, which is really affected by droughts, and Barcelona with a plant with a capacity of 200,000 cubic meters in a desalination factory. This has been used in case of extreme drought, but which seems to be more and more frequent. So the future prospects show actually that more and more countries will be considering desalination. Of course, if desalination is struggling to find its place at the moment in France, so it's something that we can, of course, understand, because in France, the cost of water, the price of water is still a bit lower compared to other countries. The cost of desalinating water remains above the current market price. So this might change in the next few years because the price of water would tend to increase according to some prospects. And to sum up this issue, there is a quote here that says that desalination is an incomplete solution, but one that is necessary on a case-by-case basis. Thank you for listening, and please do not hesitate to check on our website, Construction 21, all the details and all the articles related to water, and especially these three articles that I just mentioned. Thank you, Léon. There in the chat box the link to your website, and you can click on it to look at the various articles. Thank you, Léon. Thank you to Construction 21. You're always here to join our eMag. It's always good to hear what's been published in terms of articles on the various practical topics that we address. Now we will start a discussion, a panel discussion. As I said, each panelist is working on issues of adaptation, water resilience, water adaptation in European cities, floodings, etc., etc. And today, what we are asking is how do we make sure that our European cities are resilient and adapted to water changes, and what role can NBS play? So I will start first with Alice Thorpe and Geneva. They are both master students on governance of ecological transitions in European cities in Sciences Po, and they conducted a study recently called Faced with the Growing Challenges of Freshwater Management in Urban Environments. What can we learn from Mediterranean cities in terms of urban planning, development, and governance? And now they're going to present their findings and what they have written for this study and the results, and they're going to give us some examples of a few European cities. You have the floor, Alice and Gianni.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the insightful presentations and the introduction. Yes, so me and Alice, as Estelle introduced, we are from Sciences Po, Paris, and we're studying governing ecological transitions in European cities. I hear my voice 2 times. I don't know if it is correct. No, okay. I will continue. Sorry. Yes. As you can see from this map, this is the basis of our research project. Basically, we work together with the Fédération Nationale des Agences d'Urbanisme to study how French cities can learn from best practices around the Mediterranean, how to govern better fresh water at the urban level. As you can see on this map, France will have a more and more Mediterranean climate. Here you can see Paris and Marseille will have a similar climate in the future to southern Spain. This is only one of the projections we based our study upon, but most research nowadays point to the direction that France will have a drier climate with more and more floods. So next slide, please. Our study had as a main question, as we face growing challenges of urban freshwater management, what can we learn from Mediterranean cities in terms of urban planification, development, and governance? The focus of our study was on France, but in line with this event, we are reporting some case studies that apply also to the rest of Europe and other countries around the globe to face the challenges that regard more your local territories. Next slide, please. Yes, so the results of our study is a series of case studies around the Mediterranean, especially Spain, Italy, and Northern Africa. As you can see, yeah, these best practices were categorized into three main groups: water scarcity, climate uncertainty, and access to water for all, which were the main three challenges we focused our study on. Next slide, please. Our first case study comes from Arborea in Sardinia, Italy, and focused on the use of nature-based solutions and digital solutions to better manage freshwater ecosystems. Indeed, Arborea is an area in Italy characterized by three famous wetlands, but also an important agricultural sector upon which the local communities rely a lot for income, but it's also a very polluting sector that is costing a lot in terms of environmental health to the local ecosystems. So our MED, which is the mainly implementer of this project, decided together with local authorities and stakeholders, specifically farmers, to implement nature-based solutions and a digital twin technology, which is the one we reported here in the center of the slide, which is a very fascinating technology for us students, something very different from everything else we found in our research, which is basically a technical and digital tool that creates a virtual replica of freshwater systems, of physical freshwater systems, and through which, through sensors and receptors, this technology allows to collect real-time data to help local managers, like the region of Sardinia, the municipalities, farmers, to analyze how water is consumed and also treated after usage. And in the end, it helps managing freshwater ecosystems and helps increasing the efficiency of nature-based solutions applied on the territory. Our MED says that thanks to the low cost of the digital tools and of nature-based solutions, this solution is very highly replicable around the Mediterranean, but also in France and the rest of Europe. And I leave the floor to Alice for the next case study.
Good, thank you. So the second case that we're going to go through is Barcelona in Spain, especially the idea of nature-based solution in a time of scarcity. So the perspective that we bring compared to what we will hear probably from Belgium and Denmark is that we really focus on issues linked to scarcity of water that are prevalent in the Mediterranean, and particularly in Barcelona. And so here you can see on the left of the screen a comparison of the available water in Barcelona compared to Paris, made by Together for Water. And you can really see, I hope, visualize that this is in a non-drought event. So it's not considering the exceptionality of the drought that Barcelona has had to face in the last year. And so it's a city that has learned to grow in the past decades without much water. And part of the response to that is creating non-conventional water. So Leon has talked about desalination. I will talk about wastewater treatment plants. The bigger one is in El Prat. And here you can see in the in the center of the graph, the allocation of the water from the wastewater treatment plant in 2011. And you can see that almost half of that water really goes towards the restoration of ecological flows and ecosystem services in general. So you can see 30% for the Llobregat flow, which is the main river for Barcelona's drinking water. Then to restore wetlands in the Llobregat Delta, which is a really important area in terms of migratory birds and water ecosystems. And then for aquifer regeneration. And what we find interesting here is that there is really a conscious centering of ecosystem services to answer scarcity. You're in a situation of scarcity, there may be a potential for competition of human or ecosystems needs. And instead, there's a transformation in Barcelona of a situation of scarcity towards where there may be competition, towards an opportunity for more resilience. And I want to take the example of this wastewater treatment plant, because when it was conceived and financed in 2002, it was mainly a way to complement water for farming around Barcelona, and not a way to restore ecological flows. And it was the decision of the Catalan Agency for Water to really focus on that. And in the end, by providing ecosystem services, notably for the Llobregat flow or the city of Barcelona, there was a way in which so the water cycle was restored, even though it was damaged before. And this allowed more resilience to adapt in other ways. So for example, here to have a tree canopy throughout the city that is partially fed or I guess watered by reused water by this new technology that wouldn't have occurred without the scarcity. So here we see a very innovative, interesting way to really center ecosystems to be able to increase resilience elsewhere, that we hope you can find inspiration in. And that's all for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alice and Ginevra, for this presentation of the study you've been working on. I think it's always very interesting also to have the voices of students that are working on those topics. And now we move to a whole other person who is Mrs. Nissens, Claudia Nissens, who is the mayor of the city of Eupen. I'll switch again in French if that's fine. Comme vous le savez, tous très sûrement.
As you know, probably all in 2021, Belgium and Germany were hit hardly with some severe floodings, and Eupen was one of the cities that had to face these huge floodings. This city had to quickly learn to adapt to be more resilient to water issues. So the mayor of Eupen will explain now to us how the city was able to adapt to these changes. You have the floor, Claudia. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Quick presentation from my part, from my small municipality, German speaking at the border of Belgium and Germany, 20,000 or so people living there. Our language is German. Well, we are pretty bilingual because we belong also to Belgium and to the Walloon region. As we said, we were hit by the severe floodings in 2021. As you can see here, a small extract, small photos. We have one district called the Lower City with two rivers with a dam, and the other one coming from other sources, and they both cross in the lower part of the city, and they flooded the city on July 14, 2021. The full city center of the lower city was flooded. 1,800 families were affected. Water came to 2 meters, 2.50 meters in the city center. Since then, so you said how we managed to or we are preparing result. We were not prepared for that, of course, and we are now preparing ourselves again, and we are rebuilding the whole district neighborhood in Le Pen. So we designed a reconstruction plan, and quickly we decided to not do any more constructions along the river banks with a big but, because we are not owners of all the buildings until now, and that is the case. So we're not able to buy back all the buildings along the river bank in order to not have any more city center there. So we've decided to remove the buildings which belonged to the city or building that we were in charge of. And then we developed new project, we designed new projects. We invested about 5 million euros for new bridges without pillars, with a different performance to let the water flow. This is a slide with all the different projects. This project is really at the heart of our rebuilding project of the lower city. Here you see some buildings which were a bit ugly before the flooding, but after the flooding they became even more deteriorated. So we pulled them down, and we only kept those that has some historic aspect. So this used to be a large parking place, and we developed a new project in this very place. You see in blue the water level to the right, top right. So we put down all the constructions to develop a large park, 8,000 square meters. This is costing us 2 million euros or thereabouts. We have had some subsidies from the Wallonie region and the German part to build this urban park where people will be able to rest during hot days, but also to give room for water. We have not completed this project yet. I'm just showing you a number of photos of what it could look like. A bit further down, please. This is the urban park project to the left with the river in the middle, and then we put down all the buildings all the way to the street to give extra room to water. And there will be a parking lot. It's always difficult if you talk to the citizens. So if we just spoke to the citizens, we would just have a parking lot, but we managed to do more than that. With much explanations, we managed to also design this park that will not just be a parking lot, but a park for the youth as well. As I say, work is underway. What you can see here, it takes a lot of imagination to understand what it will look like. Maybe in a year's time, we could really have a better idea. We would have greened the city center. Now, other projects also here. We have a lot. We had a lot of obstacles dating back from our historic industrial era, but now we've been able to build above the water 2.50 meters above so that it wouldn't overflow. Also, we had to revamp, refurbish a lot of the streets. The pipes had been affected and damaged by the flooding. we had to repair a lot of the streets. So we decided to green these streets. But there's a large company there that is using these streets. But we will have more trees. We will have water, rain systems that will feed everything that has become green. So in case of drought, we will have some water supply for the trees. So in all of these projects, we try to waterproof the ground and to plant trees. This is not in the same part of the city, but this is something which we want to implement everywhere in the municipality. That's a lot of work. We must work on retention basins and also on fresh areas during droughts, so we can collect rain and have water systems to collect a water rain in case of droughts. This is still under progress. We are conducting a study for the city. We are trying to welcome or to we are trying to use constructing lands to develop more retention areas. This is quite difficult, as we said. It's not just a matter, it's also a matter of political willingness from above to do urban planning in a different way to what we've done so far, and to explain to the population that climate change or climate phenomena or extreme events are already here and we need to get prepared for this. So this is something that we have to look at. Thank you, Mrs. Nissen. I think what's interesting here in your presentation is to see that these construction projects have involved a lot of different stakeholders. There's a political willingness, but also citizens who are willing to change things, to understand the changes that are ahead and that are already happening in the city. So I think it's important to have this partnership, this collaboration between the civil society and the public authorities. So thank you very much.
To our last speaker of the day, who is Sarah Lund, who is Director of International Collaboration and Strategic Sustainability Initiatives at the Climatorium Center in Denmark. Thank you very much, Sarah, for being with us today. The Climatorium is involved in projects that harness nature-based solutions for climate adaptation and resilience. So it would be very great if you could tell us a little bit more about that, and also about how you work with bottom-up approaches to enhance water adaptation in European cities and regions in Denmark. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thanks for having me. Yes, so my name is Sarah, and I am working at the Climatorium, which is this building you see here on the slide. And I'll tell you a bit more about first what Climatorium is. So we are located in Denmark, that you see up here on the map, on the red part of Denmark, a small city called Lemvig, right next to the sea, but also next to a fjord. And the other dots that you're seeing is international partners, both in the Netherlands and in New Zealand. And I'll get back to that part. So here you have the fjord, which is quite interesting. That's crossing through the mainland where the Climatorium is located, because that is the reason why we're located there. Is a lot of challenges within water, both from the sea, but also very much from the fjord, and how all different municipalities must collaborate. So there's lots of water challenges. Yeah, please shift to the next slide. So that is the reason why this building is existing today. And it's always a little bit tricky to explain what climatorium is, and starting with the building, but I'll do my best, and I hope that that it makes sense. But we are a non-profit organization. We are located at this building, and the building was built around climatorium. It is a beautifully architecturally designed building, designed by architecture firm 3XN. It was a tender process with different designs entering, and this was the one that was chosen with the purpose of being located right next to the sea. And on these pictures, on the one where you see the water, it is super calm, but that's quite often the difference in being quite rough sea. But it's located right next to and able to withstand water coming up quite high, meaning that we need to face the challenges and adapt to the challenges and work with the challenges. So that was the reason for this building, which is also around the new Bauhaus concept or work in having beautifully designed that it draws the eye and that draws people in. So again, this building is a office space on the first floor where we are sitting. There's the people working at Climatorium. We're 16 people today. Then we're sitting next to a water utility, Lemvig Water. And then we have people from the central region that are working with polluted soils, and then flyby office spaces with different members. So it is the first floor is work, but very much different companies that meet during a normal week and have conversations about climate change and how we together can collaborate. On the first floor, on the entry level, it is open to the public. So it's open for people to enter and to have a dialogue about what we're actually doing. And that has shown to just be an amazing success. So that is for conferences and for visitors and just for tourists and for the people of the area. So I hope that gives an idea of what Climatorium is. And then in the following slides, I'll dive further into it. But the physical building is very important. When it was established with the, you can go back to the wording before. When it was established, it was to work with water, climate, environment, energy, and circular economy. Though due to us being very closely linked with a water utility that's based at the building, a lot of the projects we're working on are around water. But I mean, water taps into anything really, but water is very central to what we're doing. And the next slide, please. So here you just see some pictures of the life in the building. So that is for pensionists, it is for students, it is for the local people entering, it is for universities working on projects, and it is for industry, like you name it, candies, anything. And what is being exhibited in this entry level of the building is all projects. So it is not what climate change is, which is quite common for when we're inviting people in. This is what are we actually doing? What are the solutions we're working on? And that is very, very amazing, because it gives a purpose for having the conversation on a completely different level. And next slide, please. What we have done with the many different projects that we're working on, have mapped it out in the area. So this is showing a cut of the municipality of Lemvig. There's only 20,000 people living there, but the area is compared to the inhabitants quite large, 508 square kilometers. And what we want is also to invite people out in nature to see the nature, to see the environment, and then out there hear about the different projects that we're working on. So this gives a quite good illustration of what is actually ongoing. And with the vision to add the adjacent municipalities also to this map, as well as our partners across the globe. I won't have time to dive into all of them, but I know there'll be some videos shared with like easy communication of some of the projects, but we're working on nature-based solutions on logging the groundwater levels, which this area is quite challenged by high groundwater levels. It is with PFAS and PFAS, how we can clean that or work with that. It is working with satellite data and the mapping of our land to get a better understanding on how to work with the assets underground. It is working with Power to X, which is huge in Denmark, but not so much in the intention for storing energy, but more the extreme amounts of water that is required for that process, and where are we getting this water from, which has been something not really spoken about. So we're mapping how can we create value out of water and use it for the areas where it is a problem. Not that we should call water a problem, but because water is an amazing resource, but working very much with how do we actually treat water based on different categorized values of water. So a lot of different projects. And you can go to the next slide. This map here shows on the international level, because we are also part of a lot of different projects, collaborating with countries, from around the world. There's a lot of EU projects. So one of them is Embracer, which is working with nature-based solutions, fairly new still. And it's tried to map out on this map here that the light green ones are partners in Embracer projects. Then we have Treasure that is working with macroplast and how that is traveling, like where does it actually come from, and how does it travel on land and out in the waterways, and what is being cleaned, and how is it suddenly breaking down to microplastic. So trying to map that. Then we are part of a green corridor projects, looking at how can we, for transportation of our goods, make that greener, and making sure that the pathways are entering the right places of the country, so it doesn't just go to the capitals, but that we also remember the smaller areas. And then the last on this one is the climatorium, written with a C, which is on the international basis, because we do have the vision of how we can have climatoriums in different countries for the knowledge sharing and for the collaboration, but very much where you are entering and inviting the community in to be a part of it. We are built around this quadruple helix model. That is, I mean, it is spoken about a lot with a lot of people doing it, but it's become a central tool for us in whatever we do, to knowing that we have a lot of research and a lot of knowledge. We have a lot of challenges quite often within our public entities, and we have private companies that can work with it. They can come up with solutions. And in the center, we have the civil society that we must engage, but not just in any kind of way and not in a one-to-one. It depends on the project, how we invite the people in. And if you just click on the mouse, there should be a little extra circle, because we are looking at a quintuple helix. Also to much be better at working with the knowledge that we have from our previous cultures, and also the generations to come, because it's not only about coming up with new research all the time. We must also know what is the knowledge that we already have existing, and be better at this storytelling, which then taps into the central part of our civil society and engagement and the storytelling here. So this is very core of the tools that we're using. And please, the next slide. So to map out what climatorium is, it is knowledge sharing, and you might just press all of them and I'll get the 3 different parts of the knowledge sharing, because knowledge sharing is a big thing, and we have a tendency to just share knowledge within the people that we can see ourselves within, the ones that we are similar to. But we must share knowledge across our sectors, across our age groups, across interests, and also this part of across the borders, which is the vision for climatoriums across the borders. And it is very core. And if you can move to the next. What we're doing with this knowledge sharing is that around the year we have different events, and the key events is the National Climate Summit. We are having it here in August, 21st and 22nd of August. This year diving into climate adaptation over 2 days. Then we're working with children, and very much in making children aware of how they can work with their ideas and their creativity. So we invite them in to learn more about the project that we're working on, but then what is their idea? And on this picture, you can see a round pizza box showing some of the creative ideas, thinking pizzas are round, why are boxes square, and how much material can we actually save if we start making them round. And it's amazing ideas like that that might not be able to take it all the way out to the commercial field, but just the fact that we invite them in to also think and ask questions is amazing. And then we have youth, working with youth, and then in general, just workshops and events and exhibitions. So this is sort of working with the entire quadruple helix model in the storytelling and the engagement. And here you just see some pictures of the children, because it is happening here on the 23rd of August, and it's just an amazing day with entertainment and making it fun for them, and also making them able to feel a part of it. And then the next one, please. And this is coming towards the last slide, because I just want to highlight the opportunity. If any of you listening in are working with youth, then please reach out afterwards, because what we would like this year is to really connect youth across borders with what is your connection to water, and to create a bit of awareness about that is not only within our own little circle of living day to day, but there is a lot of water, or the climate change affects differently. And as we just heard about previously in Paris and Barcelona, how in the future our wherever we're sitting area will suddenly look like something that other people have been experiencing for years. So how can we be a lot better at connecting us to create this awareness? So we're doing that over this summer with youth sending in videos with what is your connection to water. And then on the 7th of November, reaching out to different partners across the world to celebrate through online hybrid workshops, diving into youth connecting. And so please reach out for this one if of interest. And that's within these 6 categories: ocean, life, health, drinking water, groundwater, and precipitation. And you can find more on the website or contact me, and I'd like to share more. So yeah, that's all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for presenting Climatorium, and also for reminding us about that the solutions not always come from top-down approaches, but also from very bottom-up approaches. And as Sarah mentioned, you can find in the chat the links to 2 videos that show also water adaptation project. So if you want to have a look, please click on the links. Thank you very much to all of the speakers today and for being present. I think we had a very diverse panel, so very interesting to have all of the different perspectives. And I will now give the floor to my colleague Tanya, that has been able to read all of the questions that were asked in the chat. Also, if you have a question, don't hesitate to just raise your hand. We can have that a little 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A with our audience. So please, Tanya.
Thank you, Estelle. So those of you that do have questions that you would like to pose directly, feel free to raise your hands and we will give you the floor. And maybe in the meanwhile, we had 2 questions in the chat from Vanessa Weck, Calitera. I'll probably switch to French because the questions were in French. Donc la première question à propos des réseaux d'eau.
Regarding
Qu'en
water
est-il
networks,
du
what
maintien
about
de la qualité du
the
service public d'eau,
quality
à savoir
of public
équilibre entre
service,
coûts
water public
et de
service,
maintenance,
finding the balance between the
de maintenance
costs
et de
and
réduction de la
maintenance costs
consommation, donc
and
des
reducing
recettes.
water consumption?
Donc cette
What
question
about
probablement Geoffrey ou Léon,
so
si
maybe
vous
Geoffrey
avez
or
des
Léon, you could answer that
réponses. Et je
question if
pose
you have
aussi
an
la
answer
deuxième
to this.
question avant
Second
d'avancer
question
et vous
before
donner la
we
parole.
move on,
La
before I
deuxième
give you
question,
the
c'est
floor.
pour
Second
Madame
question
Nissen.
for Mrs.
Elle dit que
Nissen.
vous posez la question
You've
centrale
talked about
d'accompagnement
the
au
key
changement.
question
Comment
about
l'information, la sensibilisation et l'implication des différents acteurs a été pensée,
and
déployée et
involvement
entretenue.
of the various actors has been thought, deployed, and maintained. Thank you. Now, regarding the first question, related to the costs. Yes, this is an important question for water services. on the one hand, promoting sobriety to reduce consumption, and on the other hand, to be financed only based on consumptions and therefore promoting less maybe income while implementing a lot of actions to further resilience, which costs more and more. So that's a real huge topic when it comes to financing water services and the reduction of water consumption. No miracle solutions recipe, if you like. I know that in France, for example, all the stakeholders talk a lot at the moment on these topics to try to come up with some solutions, try to see what we could do. There's water of the pricing, with various brackets or various ranges of tariffs depending on your consumption, whether or not you consume a lot of water or not. So promoting sobriety as well, while not reducing the income and being more equitable between the various users. So there are different tools, but still this is a complex topic at the moment. Now, regarding the second question, I could have two answers. Once we had to rebuild in a very short term a whole district, we didn't have really a lot of time to enter into a dialogue between the affected populations, especially as these people were not in the good conditions to really have a free mindset to think about the future and think about the rebuilding. Everyone was affected pretty much more directly, and they had to rebuild their own houses. So in those places, we just had a dialogue for we opened up a dialogue for the urban park, and we had some district meetings to explain our building plan, but we did not have a whole process of water adaptation or water consumption. We presented the project, the rebuilding project, in small bits and pieces, but not really through a thorough presentation because of the lack of time, because of course we were the first people affected when we had to rebuild quickly. However, for the last 2 years now, with the population more at large, we are thinking about ways to rebuild and where do we want to build, which are the lands and the places where we need to limit construction in the city, what must we do to adapt. These are rather complex processes. So overall, people understand what we're trying to do, but if you really want to get into details,
avoir la possibilité d'y construire. Donc, puisqu'on
and we have people who know neighbors, or who have relatives who are concerned, so we must really do something for society. This is a rather complex process, very long process, not very practical, even though we want to conduct some projects like planting trees. If we plant 5 trees and we lose 3 parking places, that's another issue, and that could become a daily conflict. So we have to interact with the citizens on that. For me, that's the main challenge really for the first few years. How do we get the population to think in a practical way, knowing that they'll be able to enjoy the park, that they'll be able to appreciate the park. But for the time being, they mainly complain about the fact that they have no longer a parking place for their cars. So with many practical projects, along the way, we advertise also for other projects as we go along.
Thanks a lot, Mary Nielsen. That was quite interesting. And thank you also, Geoffrey, for the answer that you'd given us. And I think the question of information awareness raising and the involvement of different actors is what was quite largely covered by Sarah in her presentation. So if there are no other questions that anybody would like to pose right away, last moment, last chance to raise your hand and put your question out there. Well, if not, maybe we could have all of the our four panelists really quickly in 30 seconds tell us what, according to you, would be one big challenge looking forward when it comes to scaling up nature-based solutions for water resilience, and what could be one potential way to overcome this? No takers.
Well, I can step in. The challenges, I guess, is the human personality or the human body and how we approach these things, that we adapt so quickly, and whether we are good enough to really act on something that should make decisions on the future. That I feel our time span in our solution focus is too short. We need to be a lot better at this, remembering the generations to come and not stopping at 2100, but being a lot better at really adapting to the future and really remembering the people. That it's not about politics, it's really about the people, making sure we don't leave them behind and making decisions that suddenly you have your houses flooded and then you just lose all your assets and your pension and whatever. Really making sure that we engage with them early and making, I think anyone is prepared to work on solutions if we feel that we can trust what's being said and that we know we are being listened to and get the information we are seeking early on. And there is a tendency right now that information is being hidden from people. So yeah, I'd say that long-term vision and engagement of people is the solution.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. Maybe to conclude, Alice and Ginny, if you're still here, I don't see you. If you have any experiences that were common to or that stood out from the cities that you studied that really show the challenges and how they were overcome.
Yes, one of the big challenges I think we encountered in our study also relates to what Sarah was saying about the people, mainly awareness, I feel like, because even if on one side local authorities and people who work in the sector of water implement many nature-based solutions and other solutions to make cities more resilient, then there is the issue of making people aware of how to deal with the water problems, so to change the culture behind water consumption, but also how to answer to climate disasters such as floods that can save lives if you are prepared to face such challenges. So I would say one big challenge for the future will be to change people's relationship and culture about water. And one way to go about it is to raise awareness and implement projects like the ones we presented today while involving people.
Thank you very much, Ginevra, for this last insight of the day. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde, aux intervenants, à notre
Thank you to all our speakers, our interpreter, our colleagues for this day, for this eMag. Before we conclude, just to share some information regarding two coming events. The next event or the next eMag, as I said at the beginning, will take place on September 26th at 3 p.m. The topic will be funding renewable energy in Africa. If you're interested, please join us on this eMag on September 26th. You can scan the QR code and you can register by Zoom. But before that, on September 11th at 2 p.m., there will be a workshop in Dunkirk on the same topic, which is reinforcing resilience thanks to nature-based solutions, how cities are adapting, with some practical example, concrete examples of cities. Please join us in Dunkirk. Dunkirk, if you are there during this event, it would be great to see you there. Thank you all, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.